Hey folks, it's Joe. We're hard at work on some new episodes, so this week we're revisiting one of our favorite episodes featuring Stephen Drozd of the Flaming Lips. Stephen recently created his own podcast, Sorcerer's Orphan, a song-by-song history of the Flaming Lips. Tune in next week for my conversation with PJ Harvey's founding drummer, Rob Ellis. This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Slow Nerve Action by the Flaming Lips, featuring my guest, Stephen Drozd on drums. Born to a musical family in Texas, Stephen joined the Flaming Lips in 1991. Marrying authentic Bonham-esque bombast with a keen sense of composition reminiscent of Can's Jackie Liebezeit, Stephen's drumming is at once familiar and remarkably unique. But his contributions to the band aren't limited to drumming. He plays most of the other instruments on the Flaming Lips recordings and co-writes the band's songs. Aside from his work with the Flaming Lips, Stephen has explored film composing and has also worked with artists such as Elliott Smith, Jay Farrar, Steve Burns, and Lips offshoot Electric Worms. I spoke to him at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles before a recent performance. And now my conversation with Stephen Drozd.
Yeah, I was born in Houston, Texas, and then 2 years later, when I was like two, we moved to Richmond, Texas, which is just a small town about 30 miles southwest of Houston.
And your father was a polka musician?
Yeah, he actually, my dad, he has this whole history himself. He started playing clarinet when he was like 14, and then he joined the Joe Patek Orchestra, which was like a Czech German waltz polka dance band. Then he picked up the saxophone. He was 16, discovered rock and roll, was in the first all-white rock and roll band in Texas called Joey Long and the Wild Ones in 1956. And so he moved from a really, really small town in Texas to Houston, and that's how he started a family there. But yeah, my dad was a polka and waltz musician, and then he played in like country cover bands and stuff when I was growing up. So yeah.
Did he have any other occupation, or was he strictly a musician?
He drove a beer truck. He drove a milk truck for a while, but he always had some kind of job. I mean, he never made enough money just from music to support a family. So, and there were 5 kids. There were 5 of us, and my mom worked a full-time job. And
what did she do?
She just worked at her brother's barbecue place, first in Houston, then in Richmond, Texas. They kind of had a barbecue empire for a little while in the 70s. There were like 5 or 6 restaurants, and now there's just one left in Southwest Houston. And I try to go there when I can, but I don't get a chance to go there very often. But so yeah, they both worked full time. My dad drove a beer truck 5 days a week. Then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, came home, showered, got ready, and played from 9 to 1 in the morning at some VFW hall. So.
Did you look up to him? Like, did you think this is what I want to do?
Oh, it was so much fun. I probably started going to his gigs when I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. And by the time I was 6 or 7, whatever I might say about my dad, he recognized that I wanted to do something, and he would see me like, it's like a cliche of like beating on the boxes and trash cans and stuff. So when I was 7, he bought me a bass drum and a snare drum and a cymbal. And he said, if you play this and you keep at this for like 6 months, I'll eventually get you a whole drum set. But I'm not going to buy you a whole drum set,
Right?
Because we didn't have a lot of money, So I had like a red Sparkle, like I don't know what brand it was, bass drum, a Ludwig, just Superphonic snare, which was fancy, and then just some generic old ride cymbal. And I played the crap out of that for months. And then slowly over time, I kind of put together a little drum set. And then when I was 10, he got me an old Slingerland Mother of Pearl kit. And that was like my next drum set. So, but yeah, I loved watching him play and his band play and his drummer play and all that stuff. I was way into it from an early age, So, yeah.
What about his lifestyle? Did you want to go into music, or was it intimidating to see how he had to work this other day job and then go off to his gigs at night?
Yeah, by the time I got old enough to figure out anything, I connected that his life was not easy, I figured out the fact that he had moved to Houston and joined this band thinking that, because you can see in 1957, like the saxophone was like, kind of like, hey, something that people did, In fact, I think there should be a documentary about the rise and fall of the saxophone.
Right, it was the phallic
rock
extension of the day.
It was. It really
before
was.
the guitar.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely. I really agree with that. So, I know that he moved to Houston thinking that he was going to make the big time, and that didn't happen. So I connected the fact that he did write his own original music, but he only put out like one record of original music, and some people, it is kind of a cult collector to some people, and which really astounds me. I love the music, but I love it just because I knew it growing up. But after trying that, he was just in cover bands for the rest of his life. And by the time I was like 11 or 12, I knew that I didn't want to do that. I knew that I wanted to make my own music, And so at some point we started to butt heads because he was like, you need to be realistic and get a job and then just play music on the weekends. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to be in a band that writes their own music and paves their own kind of way or whatever. And so we really argued about that for a while. So, but to answer your question, I put that together pretty quickly, that his lifestyle and his music was his escape.
Right.
And the rest of his week was just a hard work week,
So it seems like maybe in retrospect, when you look at his concerns at the time, he was probably trying to protect you from going through the shit that he had to go through.
Now that I see it that way. I absolutely see it that way, yeah. After I'd been in the Flaming Lips for a while and we started to achieve some success, he was really proud of me, and I think he was just shocked that I was able to provide a living and not have to work. Because I remember we had a big argument when I was like 17 because I decided not to go to college, and I don't know if you can cuss on your show, but he's like,
yeah,
you're going to end up fucking washing goddamn dishes for the rest of your life. And I said, that's fine as long as I get to kind of make my own kind of music, and he just did not understand that. But now I see he's just trying to keep me from having to go what he went through, which I understand. So yeah.
Is he still around?
He passed away 2 years ago. So
were you guys in good shape when he passed away?
We were as close as anybody could be with my dad. He, he just, it's hard to explain, and I get emotional about it. His dad was apparently a monster, so I never met his father. His father passed away way before I was born. But as close as anybody could be with my dad and communicative, we were, and he was, really proud of my kids and stuff like that. So yeah, we were on good terms for sure.
It's like I never had to see it in your eyes or feel it. I could tell when you smile. It's like I didn't need to.
I mean, I think I understand what you're talking about to a certain extent because, for example, my dad's family situation was messed up. And I think when that happens to somebody, they tend to put up some sort of emotional barriers that, and those things don't just come down once they're out of that situation and they have children of their own. So it makes it difficult to relate with people like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing in our relationship is that I was the fourth out of 5 kids, and by the time it got to me, he was so exhausted from raising children. And then at the age of 11, I started playing music with him. I was going to his dance jobs with him playing drums. So he and I had a special relationship that no other kids in the family had, you know. Like I would go to the VFW halls with him, and we'd set up, and we'd play till 1 o'clock in the morning. I would help him stay awake, drive him back home. And so we had a different relationship than the other kids in the family did. So
What did the other kids end up doing?
it's just a big tragedy, really, to tell you the truth. No one's alive. I'm alive. Out of 5 kids, I'm the only one alive. So.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's drugs and suicide and stuff like that. So
Man, I'm sorry to hear that.
it's all right. But my older brothers and my sister, for that matter, are definitely part of my musical DNA, you know, because my older brothers were into like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and Aerosmith, and I heard that's Pink Floyd. I remember hearing the first time I heard Welcome to the Machine, I was walking home from first grade, and as I got close to the house, I could hear this roll, 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 this evil-sounding music, and I'm just like, what the hell is this? And I walk into the house, and my brothers are both sitting on their beanbags smoking doobies, and Pink Floyd Wish You Were Here had just come out, and they'd gone to the record store that day and bought it, you know, so I had that with them, and my sister was into like, you know, the Bee Gees and Donna Summer and disco, and so
awesome.
I could go to her room and listen to her records, and I love all that music to this day. And you know, Casey and the Sunshine Band. And in my brother's room, that was like where you went if you wanted to check out, you know, Nazareth or Rush or something. So because of them, I, you know, had a lot of. None of them were into punk rock. My brother bought the Sex Pistols record when it came out, just because he was so shocked by the title. And he thought it was funny, but I don't think he didn't connect to it like punk rockers connected to it. He thought it was kind of like jokey, like Alice Cooper or something. But besides,
It kind of is to a certain
yeah,
extent. I mean,
that's true. Yeah. But yeah, so they didn't go that route. But I definitely got a rich history of, you know, classic rock and, you know, 70s disco and pop from my siblings for sure. So yeah.
I wonder if you connected to punk rock in a way that no one else in the family did.
I did, but I didn't discover it till way later, and I came in it from a roundabout way. It wasn't like I was pissed off and I found this Clash record. It was like there was this girl at high school. I actually forget her name now, but I thought she was really cute, and she was kind of a punk rocker, and she had the Repo Man soundtrack. I don't know if you know that, but
Yeah, it's got like Black Flag and
yeah, it's like a greatest hits of the hardcore bands of the day, you know. And she loaned me this cassette, and I just seen the movie, and the movie was so weird to me. I thought, I've just got to watch it again to try to figure it out, you know. So it was on a VHS tape. I ended up watching like 4 times and just like slowly getting this absurdist kind of, you know, take on whatever life is, especially for teenagers or whatever. And at the same time, I had that cassette of the soundtrack, and that's how I kind of got into punk rock, was through that way.
Yeah,
So
I bet a lot of people did.
I think some guys from my school and my age all kind of agree on that. So yeah. But there were a group of kids that would go to Oklahoma City and Norman and go see the Replacements and the Minutemen and Husker Du, and I didn't experience any of that stuff. I missed out, you know. So even though I was aware of it, I was kind of stuck playing on the weekends with my dad's country and polka band, you know. So and the sidebar to that is, it's exciting when you're 11. By the time you're 15, you're like, you don't want to do that anymore.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. But,
I grew up in Milwaukee, which at one time was a mecca for polka music too.
oh yeah, absolutely.
And there was one club left when I was like starting to play drums.
What was it called?
It's called Arts Concertina Bar. It was concertinas only, no accordions allowed. And
Wow.
there was this woman named Concertina Millie that played there that I would go sit in with once in a while. And then the owner, Art, sold the bar a few years ago, and the new owners started to let accordions in. And
nuts.
then apparently the club got shot up one night, and everyone thinks it was the old owner because he was pissed that they let in the accordions.
So there's a war between accordions and concertinas?
At least in that guy's mind, there was.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
That's really deep.
So that's how deep it went. I mean, I bet there were...
Because accordions have traditional keys, but concertinas don't
Buttons.
have any.
Yeah, it's just all buttons.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, so that just kind of
comes from an era when there were enough polka bars that someone could have a specialty polka bar.
That's really cool. By the time I think first time I went to Milwaukee was 1990, so I don't know. I can't remember where we played though, but it definitely seemed like, the song "What Made Milwaukee Famous" has made a loser out of me. It definitely felt like a beer-soaked old traditional town.
It still is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to something you said before about how you kind of butted heads with your dad when you decided that you wanted to write your own music and kind of forge your own path.
Yeah.
So I wonder, was there a time when music became more central to your identity and less of like something that you were doing with your family?
Well, that's a good question because it really always was a combination. And like I said, the things I could say about my father, the good things I will say is he got me my first drum set, encouraged me to keep doing it. But he did make me, he said, that damn Aerosmith, whatever, God, shit that is. No.
Yeah.
You got to learn your waltzes, your polkas, and your four-on-the-floor country beats. I'm like, okay, Dad, I'll work on that. The other interesting thing about that, and this kind of illustrates that my dad was a little more open-minded than I realized, but when I decided to start learning piano, at first he got really angry because his dad had told him when he first wanted to get a saxophone, he's like, you need to pick one instrument and just play that instrument. If you start fucking around with other stuff, So he had that in his mind. So when I started playing piano, he really resisted it. But after a while, he couldn't deny that, I'm tooting my own horn, but he just couldn't deny that I was getting really good. And he went out and bought me an old upright piano. So there you go. So even though he would, clash with me on this, he still would let me explore these things. And I think by the time I was 15 or 16, I felt like, I'll play a gig with my dad, but I'm looking somewhere else for sure, and it just felt like I was just biding my time by that time, by the time I was like 15 or something. So
She gets out of her head as she talks to the ceiling. You can hear what she said. She said, that's the difference between us. That's the difference between us. That's the difference between us. You see, that's the difference between us.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
it's funny. I tell Wayne this from the Flaming Lips all the time. It's like the rock star future I envisioned is actually not as cool as how my life turned out, Because, when you're whatever age, you think of Kiss on stage with them, or you think of Led Zeppelin, or you think of Pink Floyd, and it's like, and we're all those things kind of wrapped up into one thing. And in the Flaming Lips, I get to do all this music that I otherwise wouldn't, like that summer camp soundtrack, then the Christmas on Mars soundtrack, which is really like, it's like a poor man's Stravinsky and Holst and some of these classical composers. And I think really only the Flaming Lips could make that like all work under the umbrella of the Flaming Lips, and that's part of Wayne's genius. But so yeah, when I envisioned being a rock star at 8, it was like, all right, I see the cover of Love Gun. There's all these girls looking at the guys in the band, and I wanted that for a while, And then later on, I'd see the imagery of Pink Floyd and be like, man, I want to be weird like that, And it would just change, and then. By the time I joined the Flaming Lips, they were one of my favorite groups. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was because you've had two of the guys on your show. In a series of like 6 months, I saw 3 shows that kind of changed my life. I saw the Jesus Lizard in April of 1990 in Houston, Texas, and it was fucking incredible. I couldn't believe that the guys singing was such a wild man, but the 3 guys playing were like. Man, they could have been a Rush or something, or whatever, they could play anything. And then a few months later, I saw the Melvins played about 30 people in Austin, Texas, and it was the most powerful thing I'd ever seen in my life. It was just so powerful, And it's just 3 guys on stage, And then about 6 months later, I saw the Flame Lips the only time I saw them before I joined. So I saw those 3 bands within, a pretty short period of time, and I was in, man. I was like, whatever this thing that is happening. And I liked Nirvana, and I'd loved Dinosaur Jr. for a while, and I got into Sonic Youth, and I'd done my homework, but seeing those 3 shows was like, man, that kind of like, now I'm really doing this, And then I joined this band called Janus 18 in Austin. And they were all from Oklahoma, and it was weird because I'd lived in Oklahoma, but in a different city. So I met them. We played around Austin. We did our first tour together up through the Midwest. That was the first time I went to Milwaukee. Then they all moved back to Norman, and I went with them, and that band fell apart. And then a month later, I met my wife, Becky. We're married now. And then about a month after that, Wayne and Michael came to my house with a videotape of me playing with this band, Janus 18. They're like, Janus 18, yeah, that's you on drums. I'm like, yeah. It's like, you want to join our band? And I was like, fuck yeah, I do, yeah. Because our drummer just quit. So.
What about their music spoke to you?
Well, I didn't really get them till a friend of mine had played "Oh My God," the record that came out in 1987, and there was a couple of songs on it. I thought, man, this is really weird for like a post-punk band to have a 9-minute song that's got piano, and it could be like a Pink Floyd song. And I know the song was piano. I liked that, but then I kind of forgot about them. And then that record, "In a Priesthood of Amulets," came out in 1990, and that just seemed like for me it was the right combination of like classic rock, guys that grew up on like. Foghat or something, or whatever. Wayne's. He's got pretty serious musical DNA. So does Michael. But there was just a combination of wildness and traditionalism that really connected with me. It's like my brother's record collection, but fucking wild, And I'd seen him, so that helped. When I saw them live the one time, they did like 3 covers, which was like really, they did Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. I'm like, who does that in 1990 at the Cannibal Club in Austin? The Flaming Lips, So, and they had the Smoke Machine, the lights. And so by the time I met those guys, they were like in my top 3 favorite bands for sure. So lucky break.
How would you describe your role in the band, and how has it evolved over the years?
I think in some ways people give me way too much credit. I know that sounds weird to say, but I joined as the drummer, and I guess I had been writing my own music for a while, but it didn't really have I didn't have my own thing.
Didn't have a creative voice yet?
Yeah, like one thing might sound like kind of some jazz song by Pat Metheny, whatever, and then something else might sound like Electric Light Orchestra. I didn't really have my own path, But I started playing some stuff for Wayne pretty early on, and he had responded to it. And he's like, well, let's, do a 4-track of that. I'll take it home, and I'll write some lyrics. And so the first record, I was on Transmissions from the Satellite Heart. Like 4 of the songs on there were songs that I'd made the music for, And so over the years, he and I we just really bonded, he would come up with an idea, I would help him do a variation on that idea. I would come up with an idea but had no lyrics at all, and he would write lyrics and turn into this wonderful thing. So that evolved from me being the drummer to like, people are like, man, he plays 90% of the instruments. It's like that might be true on some songs, but I am the guy that's like, this music, we're gonna, we should do it this way or that way. But Wayne's really the creative mastermind of the group. The visual. All the artwork, all that stuff. It's his band, but I just feel like I am a side man, I'm like a side man to his show or whatever, but I think we have, over the years, have really created a cool working relationship together, so. But to answer your question, multi-instrumentalist, kind of the musical director of the group, so, yeah.
Have you always been a generally confident person musically?
Yes. Yeah. I started playing drums when I was really young, but I wasn't in music education at all. But I moved to a really small town in 8th grade in Texas, and the only electives were shop or band. They didn't have speech or drama, which is what I'd done before. And so I had to join band, So I got a crash course in learning how to read, music and stuff. And I'm still not very good at it, but I was able to fake my way to all region that year.
Because you could remember it, you could memorize it.
I could, yeah, exactly. I could get it down enough, and then just have it in there where I could play it well enough. And then, I really kind of rose up in the ranks in ninth grade. I was all region again. In 10th grade, I was the only person from my region to make All-State in Texas, which was a big deal.
Band and football go hand in hand in Texas, and they're both really competitive. And
Well, that's true. There's the marching band, and then there's the orchestra, which is a whole other different.
okay, got it.
Depending on what school district, if you're in a rich school district, it's they spend a lot of money on their music programs. Not anymore, but they used to. So playing with my dad and kind of making money for the family, playing shows with him, gigs with him, and then joining the school band and doing well with that. I was pretty confident for a while. The only time I wasn't confident was when I was like 17 or 18, and I thought, am I gonna be able to make my own music, or am I just gonna be like a dude that plays in a country cover band on the weekends or whatever? So, but besides that, I've always felt pretty confident about stuff.
Today's episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by our good friends at Revival Drum Shop. Revival is community-oriented, and they feature a one-of-a-kind collection of vintage and handmade custom drums, eclectic percussion, lessons, and rentals. They're truly one of the great drum shops of the world, and you can check them out the next time you're in Portland, Oregon, or online at revivaldrumshop.com.
Shortly after you joined the band, maybe 2-3 years, that's when your first hit single came out, She Don't Use Jelly.
Yeah, that's true.
Did that change your life?
It did, because I was like the first year I was in the band. So the Flaming Lips had signed to Warner Brothers, and this is before like the Nirvana explosion. So they'd signed to Warner Brothers in like 1990, before the big explosion happened, and they'd made their first record for Warner Brothers called "Hit to Death in the Future Head," which I think is a woefully underappreciated record, and people just don't know about it. That record came out in early '92, so by the time I joined the band, that record had been done for like a year. But the drummer, Nathan Roberts, who I think is a great drummer, had left, and Jonathan Donahue, who formed Mercury Rev, had made the record with them, and those guys had left. Meanwhile, Ronald Jones, our new guitar player, and I joined shortly before Ronald. So first year I was in the group, we were touring for that record. And no one knew about it. No one cared. We were on a series of tours opening for bands that I don't even want to mention. They're just not worth mentioning, Like we were on tour with Throwing Muses for 3 months. It was like, this is horrible. The one thing it did do for us was get us bonded together. And I remember we were in the middle of that tour in New York City in November of '92, and one of the heads of Warner Brothers came to us and said, in January, you have to make a new record. You have to make a new record, and it has to do something, or you're out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way it goes. So we got home, and we made the transmissions from the Satellite Heart record. And
Do you like having that kind of a mandate? Does that kind of pressure motivate you to do?
oh, for sure,
work?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll endlessly just dick around with something unless there's like, hey, this needs to be done by whatever time, Wayne's really good at, what do they say at Apple? Genius ships, or true artists ship.
Right.
Yeah. So, but we were so tight just from doing these tours and being in one little small van together that the idea of making it didn't seem that daunting. It seemed like, well, we already had like 4 or 5 songs kind of built up, but then that record came out, Transmissions, and we toured a lot for that. We opened for Pointer for Pyros. We opened for the Butthole Surfers, Stone Temple Pilots, Tool. The record had been out for a year, nothing was happening, and then we did a 3-month tour with that band Candlebox, and that's when alternative rock radio started push She Don't Use Jelly. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, that's kind of a minor hit,
Right.
Cloud's Face Metallic was the flop, and then our manager, Scott Booker, and Wayne, 2 of them convinced Warner Brothers, if you give us this budget, we'll make
for
our
Zyreco.
experimental
Yeah.
4 CD record
Yeah.
and the pop record that will follow shortly after. And that's how that all went down.
How the fuck did you get them to let you do that after you just put out a flop record?
I know. It still astounds me to this day. I still, every once in a while, I'm like, because Wayne wanted to do 100 CDs at first.
Well, that was you had done something like that with cassettes in a parking garage.
Yeah, we did
right?
it with the parking lot experiments with car stereos. I think that was 50 on that. And then we did 2 years of what were called the boombox experiments. And the reason we did, in hindsight, it's easy to figure out why, but at the time it was just kind of this weird unknown territory. We weren't making a lot of money. But the thing was, is at that time, Warner Brothers were really, a lot of bands were on the chopping block, because the grunge thing was over. Alternative things seemed to be dying out. Electronica seemed to be kind of coming into vogue. And we were happy about that. I was so fucking sick of Seattle bands, I could puke, But so a lot of bands were just on the chopping block, and Wayne and Scott, our manager, and Michael, the bass player, were all kind of like, if we just kind of keep our heads down for a while, they won't notice us, and then they won't kick us off the label. So that's kind of what we did. So Scott got us a small budget, and we did 2 years of touring with first the parking lot experiments, then the boombox experiments, where it was 25 boomboxes on one side, 25 on the other. I would conduct one side, Wayne would conduct the other, and Michael ran the whole sound station. And on each cassette was a different part of music, but they all played together. And we would conduct people turning up and down their volume. So, and really, in effect, playing an instrument, but the instrument's just a tape playing music. It was really fun.
When you got that spider bite on your hand, I thought we would have to break up the band. To lose your arm would surely upset your brain. The poison then could reach your heart from a vein.
Some of the lyrical content on Soft Bulletin was about you, right?
Some was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you have a serious problem with drugs before that album?
I did, yeah. I did all through that record and all the way to when we started making Yoshimi. I developed a really bad opiate addiction. It was really bad. At first, people tried to kind of sweep it under the rug, I think Wayne was in denial for a while. My girlfriend was in denial for a while. Becky, she's not my wife. Our manager was like, well, he's a grown man, he can do whatever he wants. And it just got to a crisis point by the end of touring for the Soft Bulletin and starting to work on Yoshimi that I got to basically to a crisis point where I had to quit or I was going to end up dead in the next couple of months or something. So,
What did it take for you to come to that realization?
well, if you really want to get into it, I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but the house I lived in Norman, Oklahoma with one of my best friends, all of our utilities had been shut off. I was hiding from him because I had pawned his guitar, and I was sleeping in the garage to avoid having to talk to anybody. And I was laying there thinking, man, this is not cool, I didn't have my car anymore. I'd lost everything. I had nothing. And Becky and I had broken up, and she had moved to St. Louis and then to Los Angeles, and she was going to move to Japan to teach school there. And so I didn't have anything. And then Wayne and I were planning on driving up to Dave's studio. I ended up being like 6 hours late for us to meet to go drive, and Wayne and I just had it out, and I already knew that I was at the edge here, like something's got to give. And then Wayne and I had this sort of confrontation, and so I decided to just stay up in Fredonia at Dave's studio and just kick it, and that's what I did. And did a lot of drinking to get through it, and that was it. Yeah, but for about 7 years, I was a pretty hardcore opiate addict. So yeah.
It seems like you had a very kind of close and also fraught relationship with your dad. So what did you take from that experience and kind of apply? Like, what are the positives that you're able to kind of filter through your own identity and apply to the way that you raise your kids?
Well, that's a great question. The number one is to try not to be like my dad.
Everybody's like their dad to a certain extent, right?
I think my dad tried not to be like his dad because I heard horrible stories about his father. And I try not to be. My dad's temper was really bad. And he was never physically abusive, but he would scream.
Right.
And every time I scream around my kids, I freak out really bad. Like, okay, I just did a Vernon. My wife's like, it wasn't that bad, or don't do that again. It's really, I am lucky that, you know, I have to go on the road and be away from my kids for 2 weeks at a time. But when I'm home, I'm really there. I'm really present. And a lot of guys I know, they have these 9-to-5 jobs and they never see their kids, you know. So it's a trade-off for me. I don't see them for a couple of weeks, but now they're getting old enough where I take them on tour with me sometimes and stuff. So, and that's really fun. And they love coming to lip shows now. They get it. When they were really little, they would just be there, existing. But now they're like on stage, like, and they know the songs and they're way into it. So that's a positive. But I just try to be, just try to be more present with them at all times. You know, more involved in what they're worried about and what they're going through and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about how people can take a step forward from where they came from in their life. In most cases, that's the best you can hope for. You know, so if your father's situation when he was growing up was super fucked up and he took a step forward, I mean,
he did.
You know, maybe that's the best he could do.
And I didn't give him credit for that until way later when I was talking to his sister. And she's like, you know, don't be so hard on your dad. His dad was a monster, basically. So he was a tyrant, and he was abusive, and he was very old school, like the father of the house rules the kingdom, you know. And so as bad as my dad had it, I think it was an improvement he was an improved human from his dad.
And they moved over from Czechoslovakia? Or?
Not them, no. My dad's grandparents were from Czechoslovakia. So, but my dad's parents were born in Texas, but they spoke Czech. And I mean, I remember my grandmother going to see her. She died when I was like 7, but I remember going to the nursing home where she was, and my dad and her spoke only in Czech, like fluent Czech. They just spoke in Czech. Do
you speak it at all?
I know like 3 words. What's cool is we've been to Prague only once, actually.
Really?
But the one time we played a show in Prague in 2003.
How is that possible that you've only played there once?
We've been to Ostrava once, and we've been to Prague once, and I'm just like, why don't we go back to Prague? Because it was the best time I ever had. We rolled in like 7 o'clock in the morning. It was cold. It was in March. And we got off the bus, and it's that sort of like, it's that Twilight Zone time where it's too early to really go do anything, when you're not doing sound check yet, but you can't sleep because you're kind of jet lagged and you're wired. And Michael, the bass player, and I got off the bus, and we just started walking around. We opened the door, and there's this huge beer hall. And this is like 7 o'clock in the morning. And there's all these men smoking pipes and drinking these big tankards of beer at like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I've come home. You know?
Right.
So we went there, had a beer, and then we went down the street. And we stumbled in this restaurant and had literally one of the best meals I've ever had. And Michael would agree. We had this sort of goulash soup and all these meats and stuff, and the meal cost us like €5 each, and I was like, this is heaven. And then the show that night, all these kids came to me to talk about my last name, and they brought me gifts, and they brought me like their own version of moonshine, and so it was pretty cool to go to Prague, but I've only been once, so. But you had a question, I went way off the mark there.
Let me ask you this.
My dad's family, what my dad didn't know until like very late in life was that his grandfather was a musician. His dad never told him that.
Huh.
Sounds like my dad's dad was a real dick, but
You never knew him?
Sorry. No, he died way before I was born. But yeah, my dad told me, he's like, I was heartbroken to find out that my dad was also a musician. I think he played accordion, or maybe it was concertina,
right?
In like a polka band, or like 1915, 1920 kind of era. So yeah.
Do you have any particular strategies to kind of address, like have you ever tried therapy or anything like that, or like any of all of this progress that you've made, have you just kind of made it on your own steam?
Oh no, not on my own steam. Yeah, if I didn't have my wife, I don't know if I'd be alive actually. I have a therapist I go to. I've lost a lot of family members, and in some ways it just can make you so callous, But I try not to be that way, but. Yeah, I think with my wife and having supportive bandmates that I make art with, like when I was at my worst, they were at their best with me. So that, that made it easier. And they weren't drug addicts. I think if I'd been in a band where like 3 of us were drug addicts, we wouldn't have made it out.
You'd be dead.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what happens to so
Lots
many
of bands.
The Stooges or whoever,
Yeah.
There's a rich history of that. But the fact that Michael never did drugs and Wayne didn't do drugs, and I needed to quit, and I had that support system, definitely helped me quite a bit. So, yeah.
What are your hopes for your children and the world that they're living in?
Fuck.
What
do you want from me, man?
Well, I always ask this because I think having kids is an act of good faith, that the world is going to be okay enough for them to have a happy life, right? Like that has to be kind of one of the premises under which you have kids. If you think if you've given up faith in humanity, then maybe having kids isn't
when
such a good thing.
My son Daniel was born, W was in the White House, and we thought, boy, this guy sure is an idiot, And then Lottie was born right before Obama was elected, and that was a very exciting time. So it felt like my kids are going to grow up in this great, brave new world, And now we have what's going on now, and I think my kids are freaked out. They're freaked out on a daily basis because, we can only control what they see so much, and they both have electronic devices and we have filters on them, but that we can't filter out Trump, So I think they're both a little afraid of the future, but I know my son, when he was 5, he said he wanted to be a music guy and work at Wendy's. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's an attainable goal, But
Wait, didn't Wayne work at like a
Long John Silver's,
yeah,
for like 25 years or something. Yeah, yeah. So there's a parallel. Yeah, but
what's the most challenging thing in your life right now?
To be honest, not getting burnt out on touring and playing music. I know like artists will be like, not a day goes by where I don't play the piano or I've got my guitar. It's like sometimes I'll get off the road, I don't even look at my piano for like a week, And I've got a beautiful Steinway full grand piano at home. It's such a beautiful instrument. I mean, it's wonderful. But I just get burnt, man. Like I don't want to hear music. I don't want to play music. I don't give a fuck. And
good thing for podcasts, right? Like,
that's right.
Well, I mean, that's really the genesis of this show. Is I was on tour, and I couldn't listen to music when I wasn't playing. I couldn't listen to it. I couldn't enjoy music, so I started listening to podcasts. And then I was like, man, I want to start a podcast.
Thank you.
And
you summed it up right there. Yeah.
And one of the questions that I ask people, and I get different responses, how often when you're actually playing do you feel that elation and that joy? Do you get it every night?
At some point every night, I'll get it. It depends on like where in the show. It depends on, like I said, there's like 3 tiers of like the level of enjoyment of performance. You know, the worst one is when you're worried about something technical fucking up, and it's just gonna like your shit's gonna stop working. But above that is worried about yourself fucking up. But when all your stuff's working and you're feeling in control, then you can just play and enjoy the moment. And when that happens, it's badass, you know. So, and you hope that it happens at least once a night. There's been shows in my life where it was number 3 and number 2 the whole time, you know. But there's a lot of times it's like you're just playing music and it's just wonderful, you know. The shows we've been having lately have been consistently fun and really powerful and super focused, and yeah, I'm really happy with what we're doing right now. So, but yeah, that's what I hope for, is just to enjoy playing the music, you know.
Do you have any creative goals that you haven't explored yet?
I want to write a book.
A novel?
A novel. I don't want to write an autobiography about being in a rock band. I don't want to write an autobiography about my life and my family and tragedy, but I want to write some kind of fictional story that's based on those things loosely. So that's something I'd like to do. I'm writing some stuff right now, but it's very, very early stages. So yeah, that would be it. I'd like to write a book.
Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or do you think we got it all?
You kind of covered a lot of stuff, you know. I thought you might throw a few weird things at me, like you know, the drug thing is kind of weird because I'm a little less open about it than I used to be before I had children.
Why is that? I mean, you just want to be the one to control the information they get about you,
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and they're gonna find out, and they're gonna wonder why was it so bad, Dad? And I'll have to explain to them why. So.
but then maybe maybe they can learn from your experience, so they don't have to go through it, right?
God, I hope they don't. I think if I'm just really honest with them, and you know, I try to be. I think I am. I'm pretty emotionally honest with them, and I'm very supportive. I think I'm a good parent. So,
how would you describe your parenting style?
I used to make the joke. It was an Onion headline: "Cool dad, actually a terrible father." It's like, man, we go over to Rick's house and his dad would just like have Cokes and like we'd eat candy, and it's like that Onion story always cracked me up.
So that's you?
No, that's not me. I don't know. I spend a lot of time with them, and you know, I talk to them a lot, and we listen to music together, and I don't know, I just feel really close with them. I feel like like I said before, I'm gone for 2 weeks, but when I'm home, I'm there. I'm just like, I'm there, and we're just hanging out. So.
Do you feel like you have a fairly easy time connecting to them on an emotional level?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In a way that you didn't have with your dad?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this sounds kind of harsh, but I knew by the age of 12 that I wouldn't be able to ask my dad any advice about anything, just because...
Right.
This sounds really mean, especially for like a podcast or whatever, but I just feel like he had such a hard childhood that his growth was stunted, and he stopped maturing at the age of 12 or 13 or 14 or 15, even though he had 5 kids and had to work, 60 hours a week. I'm hoping that, I will be able to help answer questions and guide my children as they get older and have more questions to ask. That's also my wish.
I think I had a similar experience. I think when I was a little kid, I was very close with my dad. I think he could relate to me better on that level. But then around the time I was pubescent, maybe part of it was just natural distance from your parents that happens. But I think also, he had a rough childhood and didn't have a father,
didn't have a support system.
He had a father figure in his grandfather, but that guy also was kind of emotionally closed off too. So I felt like I couldn't talk about feelings with him, or even I felt like there was he did his best, but we didn't have
It just, yeah.
that kind of an understanding.
Yeah. I totally get you.
And my dad had 5 kids too, so
Yeah, and the other thing about our family is it was chaos because there were 5 of us. We moved around a lot for no good reason.
like
We
running out of
weren't in
money
the
or something.
military. We just like have to move because my dad would have to get a different job somewhere. It was always in Texas somewhere. And then my dad's second wife, after he divorced my mom, we moved to Oklahoma because of her, whatever. But the point of that is that we constantly moved around. So like every couple of years, I had to make a new set of friends, and navigate my way through a whole new social circle or whatever. And
Do you have lots of close friends now, outside of like say the band and your
I have a
immediate
few.
family?
I have a few close friends. I have a lot of people I'm in touch with on a regular basis, but only have a few close friends. But with my kids, I'm hell bent on, keeping them at the same school, not making them move around a lot, not moving from one city to another. And I think that's another contribution that I'm making to their lives. It's going to make their lives a lot better. Stability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they can just figure out who they are.
Yeah, and that's where my therapist says I'm really winning. Like, I'm giving my kids stability that I didn't have. So I'm like, yay, me. So, yeah.
Yay, Steven. Thank you so much for being on this show.
Thank you for having me, Joe. It was great. So, thanks.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who wrote the Onion headline referenced in today's episode. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.